Sorry. Alice Cinema, created by she, her, continued by he, him, or it, if you prefer. How we doing out there? Good, great, grand, and wonderful. As you see on your screen, your dial, however, you are joining us today. And yes, it is us today, not just me fucking talking like a crazy person by himself. It is us today. As you see, Malignant. So, I'm going to be honest, it's nice to occasionally my brother kind of annoys the shit out of me. So he's a good lad. He is. He's a good lad, but he kind of annoys the shit out of me because he'll be like, you got to watch this and you got to watch that. First and foremost, believe me, my list is just as long as yours, if not longer. And some of the stuff that people suggest to me are on my list, but there's months like these where out of obligation, I have to do, movies that I didn't necessarily seek out on my own. However, Malignant was not one of them. And I really had no intention of doing a show because I can't stress to you enough, it's a little bit more fun to walk into a film with no strings attached. And by strings, I mean, I got to watch this with a critical eye and I have to talk about it, so it's hard for me to separate the two when I'm sitting in the theater. So initially, that's how Malignant was going to be. I knew James Wan was coming out with another horror film, but I don't watch trailers or anything like that, so I knew nothing about it. And once it dropped, it seemed like the feedback across the board was incredibly divisive. Like, there was no in-betweens on this one. It was either you loved it or you hated it. And I sat down and I watched it. And I'm not one of those people. I think, I'm kind of, and actually my guest will probably agree with me. I'm kind of over the whole it's only a two-way street. It's either incredible or it's fucking awful. I've gotten to the point where it's really starting to bother me. Some shit is just allowed to be okay. I promise you, it is. It can just be a fine movie. I get done watching Malignant and I was like, you know what? That was fine. I didn't overly love it, didn't overly hate it at all. I think there's stuff that can definitely, that could have used a little attention, stuff that we could have sharpened up a little bit, or flip side, stuff that didn't need to be as polished as it was. And I walked out thinking, all right, that was fine. It was dumb. It was a dumb horror film that kind of reminded me of some LSD, cocaine-infused shit out of the 80s. And, I'm sure a couple of the movies that I'm referring to will get brought up at some point throughout this podcast. But if you don't, I'm sure a lot of you, who doesn't have HBO Max now, but I'm sure a lot of you have seen the trailer for Malignant. On the off chance that you haven't, two things. One, because of my guest being who he is, there will be spoilers on this one, but I can assure you we'll try to save that a little bit towards the end, and you can, much like the movie. So, it kind of comes out of nowhere. It seems as we'll get into it. Paralyzed by fear from shocking visions A woman's torment worsens as she discovers her waking dreams are terrifying realities. We got to work on these synopsis, guys. This is fucking. I bring this up every time. You can do better. So, the reason why I decided to go forward with this show, my guest, I see he posted a little Instagram story, and he was bothered by Malignant. He did not enjoy himself at all, and I think I said something. I don't know. I was like, "You're fired. You're not allowed to make. You're not allowed to critique movies anymore." I don't know. I said something stupid because I'm a stupid person. But I'm not surprised that he didn't care for it. But me, I always want to know, especially with him. I always want to know if there was something that I had missed. So what started out as, in fact, now I blame him. Now that it's all coming out on the mic, I blame him for the show happening, because I didn't want to do a show on this, but I was like, God damn it, every time I have him on the show, we're always agreeing, and we're always, building these pieces of art up because we have such an affection for cinema, and then I just decided, you know what, it would be nice to bring him on, and so people can kind of hear a different dichotomy for once. Some person that likes it and some person that really didn't. So, without further ado, a gentleman that does a podcast of his own, and if you guys are not listening to it, you ought to be ashamed of yourself, especially if you're cinephile fans. The man goes at it the right way, and he informs you. I think the difference between our shows is he has a lot more that you can gravitate towards, whereas with me, it's just all passion, baby. Of course, I'll give you some, we'll talk cast, crew, and technicalities here and there, but the mountain of information that this gentleman continues to put together on a week-to-week basis is, I'm not going to say amazing, but goddamn, you got to be driven. Goddamn, you got to have something to say. Goddamn, you got to love movies, and that is why we're here today. So, host of I Know Movies and You Don't, my partner in crime at this point, because I just refuse to ask anybody else. Like, I'm one of those people, like, you find something at a restaurant that you really, really like, sometimes going outside of that, you don't want to be disappointed. So that's kind of why I keep asking him to come on. Host of I Know Movies and You Don't, Kyle Brule, all the way from Los Angeles, Lipstick City, joining us on Ellis Cinema Day. Kyle, how you doing? How's that? The whore doing?
Well, the horror is going. I appreciate the opening, John. I really do. I tell my girlfriend I'm old reliable every once in a while, and so that's why you keep having me on. Then the namesake is living up to its potential. So. But yeah, the horror is going. We're talking about horror genres. Actually, it's fun that today we released Deep Red, which is a Dario Argento giallo horror film. It's a wonderful conversation, and I think it pertains a lot to what the influences are to what James Wan had for Malignant, which is kind of a serendipitous occasion.
And speaking of that, I don't know if you've seen some of the most recent episodes that I have released. Well, I know you have. I don't even know why I said that. But I would say more of it, the last 10 to 15, almost exclusively Italian cinema. And a good chunk of that is Giallo. I just did The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, and I also did... oh shit, the name escapes me.
The Cat of Nine Tails.
The Cat of Nine Tails. There we go. That one as well. And just, while we're on the subject, almost the same movie. So.
Well, if you get into Giallo is very much the same, for a good, 8-10 years. I mean, it's this template of investigative, either Americans or men, who find themselves into a situation that is over their heads with a killer that is eluding them. And that's essentially the plot to every giallo. And it's stylistic flourishes that make it the enhanced cinema that it is.
Did you happen to see either of those two by chance?
Oh, yeah, no, I love Bird with the Crystal Plumage. Actually, it's funny, I lamented the idea of not doing that one first before doing Deep Red, because Deep Red is kind of like the apotheosis of of the giallo, really, before it drifts into more of an experimental, subversive age. I mean, it is truly a masterpiece of what it's supposed to be. But Bird with the Crystal Plumage is where it kind of starts. It's like the big beginning of giallo with Argento in his career. So I kind of regret not doing that one.
So what actually I was going to say, I mean, I guess you could, for your own podcast, adding that, I could see why you would, but at the same time, I still think that you chose wisely with Deep Red. Now, Cat o' Nine Tails, it was fine, but I almost felt like if the Bird with the Crystal Plumage is where we started, boy, was there way too much Western influence in the Cat o' Nine Tails, because the Cat o' Nine Tails just... The last half hour of that, I'm just like, this is so... We're just ripping what works for Americans, and I hate it when that happens with a director that has such a distinct style and eye. So I have no problem with the Deep Red pick. In fact, I think it... I mean, like you said, it is... You could make the argument that it's one of the best, if not the best, of the giallo genre.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's get into a little Malignant, huh? We had giallo attributes on this one across the board. Now, let's just, we can talk about the end as we get there, but I mean, this film opens up in a psychiatric hospital of sorts, a mental institution, yeah, and
very
reanimator, and I was like, okay, it's nice to sit down and watch something that isn't. I just didn't think it was going to be serious. Whether or not you see this out of focus something behind or in the examining room, just a little flailing arms, like you knew that it was going to come back eventually. But I thought, okay, this is a monster, and now he is. Communicating through the people that are, doing experiments on him through the radio waves. He's controlling electricity, and I'm like, all right, I'm in. And I think one of the last things that we hear before we cut 27 years later, I don't really remember off the top of my head, but we need to cut the cancer out, and then it kind of just cuts to black, and we are many, many years later with our lead. Annabelle Wallis also stars Maddie Hassan, George Young, Jacqueline McKenzie, Nicole, Brianna White, and this lady is pregnant, and she's experiencing things, Kyle. She doesn't feel right.
It's funny, because I want to cut you off, because in your opening, it's funny. You describe this dichotomy where everything's either the best or the worst, and that we need to kind of find a middle ground. And I think you and I can find agreement on Malignant in that there's one word to describe it, and it's stupid. It's just stupid. And it's where you come down on it. It's either magnificently stupid, where you're like, yeah, this is dumb, but I'm having a good time, or it's just mind-numbingly stupid, and you come on the negative. And then there's a middle ground in between. But I think it's accurate. The opening gives it almost away. The tone, the joke, because it's so heightened, over the top, exaggerated, that I already knew that it was going to be a kind of, and it's not even a horror film. It's like a thriller comedy with B-movie elements, and it's this weird amalgamation of genre that sort of works at times, but then because it gave away the game, it's funny because it got you in, but it also got me out, because I was like, oh, you're just trying to capture a Sam Raimi vibe, and I don't think you're doing it correctly.
Yeah, for sure. And I wanted to bring this up with you. It's so funny because about the two-way street. So I'm messaging you, and I'm also messaging another buddy of mine who is, I think I brought it up to you when I was talking, the stereotypical horror fan that just well, they should be nominated for Oscars, and Toni Collette got robbed, like those type of people. So I'm talking to you, who, you know, you were just like, this is a fucking waste of my time, and then I'm talking to him, and he's just like, it's the greatest thing ever. I thought the ending twist, it reminded me of Basket Case, which I thought it was funny because you said, you're right, you go, I think Basket Case wants their movie back, and he's going, dude, it reminded me of Basket Case. It's so cool. And I'm over here just like, what about Brain Damage? Brain Damage seems also appropriate.
Very appropriate, yeah.
But I think tonally is where my issue is, and this is something that we agreed on when we were messaging back and forth, where I couldn't put my finger on necessarily. I thought I was sure in the first opening sequences of the institution. I'm like, okay, silly, right? And then I think I told you after. So now we're in present day, and this pregnant woman is arguing with her boyfriend, and the boyfriend is like, you can't give me a child, which is also kind of perplexing now in hindsight, because he was just kind of a shitty person that deserved to die. And I thought that, like, maybe he knew what was going on, and that doesn't necessarily, well, there's conflicting things. But anyway, he puts her head through the back of one of these, or the back of her head into one of these walls in the bedroom, and I went, okay, now we've had another tone shift for me, because if I see flailing practical effect arms, I'm thinking, okay, Basket Case, silly, fucking dark, whatever. I see a man arguing with a woman about bringing a child into the world, and it ends with him smashing her head against the wall. Well, now I'm like somewhere in the realm of Requiem for a Dream dark, where I'm just like, this is brutal, right? And
this is you're bringing up a really good issue with the movie, which it wants to have this kind of tone, that's tongue-in-cheek tone, that's kind of silly and over the top, and it gets ridiculous. And obviously, at the end, and we'll get to it, really reveals what it is all building up to. But these little flashes of like soap opera melodrama, where he's like he's like arguing about, like, you need to take care of the baby, and then he shoves her into a wall, and like, it's so contradictory. It doesn't make sense. And also it's so violent and ridiculous that you're like, wait, is this supposed to be a joke just like everything else? Like, is he a joke of like an abusive spouse? And I didn't understand. And again, it's this flailing tone exchanges that you sort of get whiplash throughout the movie because of it.
That's a very excellent and very interesting way to put it. Whiplash of tone change. I mean, I wonder, and I only say this because of kind of James Wan's catalog. Mm-hmm. I wonder if he's just getting hip to the times, and just what I'm about to say is just I have no take on it. I'm not saying that I believe this or I don't. Are we in this period now where, so let's just get the cliche one out of the way. Like, it's very hard to be original, right? So if it's very hard to be original, is part of this film, or at least where we're trending with this, because I can't think of off the top of my head, but I felt like I have sat down and watched a movie where it was very similar in that we can do a hodgepodge of emotions and of tones now because things aren't as original as they used to be, and or is it James Wan's audience that expects, like, you know, you think of something like Death Sentence with Kevin Bacon. I think I brought that up to you, and that is a very, very tried and true trope. You know, the dad loses his son, and now it's time for revenge. But I feel like it amps up the darkness so much in Death Sentence. It amps up how violent a film like that could be. So, circling back, like I said, I really don't know how to say it, but I did leave the theater thinking to myself, have we crossed into this weird time where, like, this is what this particular horror film should be? Because the ending, you know what, let's just do it. We're 20 minutes in. Let's just do it. It's a parasitic twin that is murdering all that are around her. It's a parasitic twin. We find out she had an imaginary friend, but wasn't so imaginary. It was a part of her. Okay, so now let's back up. I said parasitic twin. Now, does it make it okay to have sequences like with her and her boyfriend? Does it make it okay that the actors and actresses, the cops that are in this, he has a great name too, like Kakoa Shaw or something like that. Yeah. I think it's Kakoa Shaw and partner Regina Moss are on the case to investigate the moida of the boyfriend, which happens after the fact. See for yourself. But from the first line of Kakoa Shaw, played by, what's his name, George Young. Yeah. I was like, well, this is intentional. Now, I don't know what I'm trying to get at here, but I almost feel it's like, oh, you remember those movies back in the day that we all loved and we all had affection for, that were these 80s horror films? Because let's be honest, every Friday the 13th movie, every Nightmare on Elm Street movie, most of the acting in that leaves a lot to be desired, yeah? I almost felt that way when I was watching this, whether it be the overacting from Annabelle Wallace. I felt that there was sequences in that, which so funny because you were just like, oh, her overacting was terrible, and then the horror fan was saying the same thing. My friend, the horror fan, he was just like, she was a little over the top, and I was like, well, between the three of you, if that's how we were playing this, where anything goes and you can push tonally whatever you want because this is a silly horror film, is this the time that we have reached in our culture? I don't know. Because, go ahead.
Well, so you're bringing up an interesting thing because, what we would call, the postmodern movement in film, which you could see as kind of a reignition from like Quentin Tarantino, you take influence of cinema or the history of cinema and it's kind of like diluting it and filtering it into a subconscious creativity. And you can even go back to French New Wave, which was like the same thing. And Quentin Tarantino is very much a fan of that movement. It was trying to bend the rules, be cool, suave, hip, and be subversive to the genres that you're doing. I feel like that's an expectation today for modern filmmakers, is that they need to embody that postmodern element, even though I don't think it is as organic as it once was. I think the last vestige of that is, say, like Edgar Wright. And everybody wants to be Edgar Wright. And, even though James Wan was making movies at the same time as Edgar Wright, well, even before Edgar Wright was, emerging from the scene, every time we tackle a genre picture, there's an expectation that we have to blend it, we have to subvert it, we have to make commentary of it. And that's what I feel like is so striking with this one, that it feels a little off, and where the tone balance comes into shift, because they're trying to create something that is silly, tongue-in-cheek. They are definitely referencing their own film throughout, that it is a ridiculous and almost an excuse just for an unhinged quality at the end. This is not actually horror per se. I wouldn't even classify this as a horror film at all. This is more of a B-movie comedy thriller. And because of that mixture, because of that postmodern mixture, there is an inorganic quality. It almost feels forced to a large degree. And while they're having fun, and I will never take that away from anyone who said they have fun watching *Malignant*, because I think that there is a bit of an unhinged quality that's so ridiculous and so stupefying that you just have to give them a little bit of an applause for just really going for it without really thinking. I don't think there is any thinking involved, and that's why I don't really think that this is a genuine horror film, because it's not really a commentary and not really a saying something about particular neuroses or anxieties or fears in our society. This is just a very particular B movie, silly film that has some, really polished flourishes and some interesting influence, but I think it lacks some real clarity because it's this big studio filtering of postmodern horror and commentary rather than it being truly organic.
Yeah, I definitely agree. While you were talking, I had got a text and I had sent, hey, I'm talking about Malignant, and I'll talk to you later. And he sent a GIF back of the scene in Freddy Got Fingered where he's about to go to a job interview and he's like in the mirror practicing as he's holding his briefcase. And I am assuming that he sent me that GIF as to make fun of some of the final sequences in Malignant where we have almost two people fighting and it looks kind of goofy. Two people, but only one body fighting, and it looks rather goofy. What an asshole! I'm gonna grill him after this is over with. But I agree with you. There does seem to be. We shouldn't be agreeing on this. God damn it! That's exactly what I wanted to avoid. But I agree with you that there is something, because it's a big budget. Maybe I asked the question because it is a big budget production that has a fair amount of money backing it. When you were talking, it kind of when you said B, like indie horror comedy, what popped in my mind real quick was Bad Milo. I don't know if you remember that one with also a very Basket Case-esque type film. But maybe because it was such a big budget, maybe that's what was lacking. Like if you are going to go this crazy and it is going to be a big budget production, which I don't necessarily know what the budget was off the top of my head, but maybe there needed to be more comedy. Maybe there needed to be more winks at the audience instead of just like, this is what it is. We're emptying the toolbox, and if you like this bananas ending, cool. If you don't, we really don't give a shit. But yeah, I think there is something to be said. Do you think it would have benefited if it was a smaller production?
Oh, I would have the opinion that it would have because a smaller, unpolished veneer on these kinds of movies really enhance the amateurity and and then the bad acting gets enhanced in a way because it feels like it does feel genuine. When you have this polished, and the budget is $40 million, a $40 million film with bad, like obvious bad acting, you start getting in the question, is it intentionally bad or is it just bad? And for me, Malignant at times answers the question that there are genuine moments that are intentionally bad or intentionally designed the way they are, but then there are a lot of other moments that are just bad, and it's due to bad writing, due to bad acting, and due to bad this intent with how they're shooting it, how they're putting it together. Because if it was more gritty, grainy, grindhouse, 16 millimeter style with a parasitic twin tumor that has flailing arms on the back of their head, like, I think that would sell it better.
Again, as you were speaking, I thought, would this movie be better as a half of what we saw and half of a found footage type film? Would it play better for those final sequences if it was executed like that? I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, found footage. It's funny. I just talked Blair Witch Project the other day, which we do an episode on. That'll come out next month or so. But found footage, I think, found a little niche and got overplayed. It's not my type of thing, or I don't think it would have enhanced it for me at all.
Yeah, I think I'm with you too, because like then the cheats that you are using with a found, I don't like it. I don't like it. So I do think maybe if we did dial it back a little bit more Bad Milo, where it's like clearly people on set know what the fuck they're doing and they're utilizing the money properly. But But, if we do that, and again, just thinking off the top of my head, I have no idea if right or wrong. If we do that, I wonder if that last sequence where she's kind of, he is kind of running through everyone at this point and just, like, to me, that was one of the things that made the parasitic twin bit okay, is like we were like, hey, how do you feel about this parasitic twin? And then it was like, what's Stewart from Mad TV? Look what I can do. Like, and then we have him we have her cutting down people. That made it okay to me in that moment. Like, I wasn't necessarily I was, because of the practical effects. Like, when it came out of the back of her skull and everything, I was like, oh fuck, I miss this shit so much. Like, it wasn't CG and shit, and we've talked at length about that, but it's the middle stuff that I agree with you, Kyle, where I kind of, you know what, I can tell you this, that we agree on. There's no fucking way it should have been an hour and 50 minutes. I tell you that.
I'll say real quick, just because I know we want to look to wrap up, but yeah, there's a middle where it's pretty insufferable to a large degree. But when you get to the unhinged end, I agree with you. There's a lot of fun to be had. I mean, it's very polished. It almost feels like The Matrix in a large degree. And I have to say, like, the action sequences are very well put together. They're over the top and silly, and if you tap into that, it's a grand time, and it's almost worth the journey up to that point, even though it is an hour and 50 minutes. What I will say, and it's just my final commentary, is just to, like, really think about when you're looking at violence on the screen. I know it can be enjoyable. I know it can be a lot of fun. I mean, but when we really think about what's happening, is that this is essentially a man, a man with vindication and a superiority complex that is controlling a woman to butcher a crime scene of a bunch of women, and then proceeds to butcher a bunch of cops in a pretty elaborate degree. And I'm like, if we really took a step back and thought about the violence on screen, it's a bit tone deaf and not all that awesome. And this is just me kind of wrestling with things that are in my mind, like where I'm thinking about my entertainment when I'm watching it. Malignant is not that. You should not be thinking about it in order to have the fun. And I believe that there is fun to be had, but again, if you're like me and you think about it, it does take it away if you're really putting into context what's happening.
I just think you're a big Blue Lives Matter guy. That's what not at all, in fact.
I'm just saying it's very tone deaf. It reminded me, another movie I enjoyed that's very similar in action set pieces is The Kingsman. And in that one, there's a very tone deaf, violent sequence of him killing, the Westboro Baptist churchgoers, and a lot of people would be like, "Yeah, we should butcher those people." I'm just saying, even though I don't like the Westboro Baptist Church, I don't necessarily want to see it getting slaughtered, by knives and guns. There's a degree of that violence in us that we need to take a step back and ask ourselves why we feel that way.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Like, you can't, and I've been saying this about horror films for years and years and years. I think once you get past the age of like 21, 22, if the violence isn't even at least on some level justified, for one reason or another, like I'm just over that. Like, I've been over that for like a decade. Cause like the cop sequence that you're talking about, I think I liked it because it looked cool. I liked it because it was executed properly. But in the overall scheme of things for the plot, those people didn't do anything. She was just trying to get out of there. Like the cops had no bearing on why the parasite was mad, and so I'm with you, and where it's just kind of like, well, it's cool if you're gonna throw everything but the kitchen sink, but like, why did you so
and I think that's a good question that people with this amount of money and ability, and this is for people who have a reputation and I can do whatever I want career, such as James Wan, they should ask themselves, why am I doing this? What is my intention? Why do I want to tell a B-movie, slasher, giallo inspired picture? And instead of just going for it because you think it is cool, which if you listen to like his girlfriend who stars in it, like Ingrid Lezoux, how they talked about creating the story was like just thinking of cool kills to have. And I'm like, I mean, if that's the extent of it, then there's an emptiness to that. And again, I get that you can have some, empty, entertaining, just wild ride experiences. There's always room for that. It's just not necessarily for me.
I agree, and I'll be more specific. Save it for action films. I don't know why that's more that for me is okay, but it is. Like you can have senseless violence like that and the body count going up, and I don't necessarily need to care. But with horror films, there's legitimate ways that you can tell a really good story, even something as bananas as this. So. You know what? You changed me. I'm somewhere between a don't like and a like. So that's not fully awesome. Just
use the phrase that I used in my review. It's magnificently stupid. That's what it is.
I agree. It is magnificently stupid. Kyle, what do we got around the corner for you? Where can they find you, hear you? Tell us all the things.
Well, I mean, I Know Movies and You Don't. You can find it on Spotify, iTunes, any streaming, podcast services, streaming services that you can think of. Not on YouTube yet because we don't have any video quality, that yet. But who knows when that will happen? I don't think ever, maybe. But right now we're doing the horror, which is a horror retrospective. Episode 31 came out today. We're going up to episode 50. Ends November 10th. So I mean, if you're in the Halloween season, spooky season, I mean, all these movies are recommended by us that you should venture out. They're good. They're good to watch during this time. They're all very good conversations. Some of the best conversations I've had doing the show. We just started doing dystopias, which will maybe premiere in the end of November. But you can also, if you're willing, we have a Patreon. You can subscribe for $1 a month, and you get an extra 50 episodes personally for just donating $1 a month. You're welcome to donate more, but all that's required is $1. And we're just about to release our Christmas season starting October 5th. So a week from tomorrow. You can start listening to Christmas episodes that goes all the way to Christmas Day.
That is fantastic. The only thing I have on for my Patreon, $2 get you feet pics. That's it.
Nice.
Yeah,
I like it.
Feet pics, and I think I do one show a year. That's totally worth $1 on it. Kyle, thank you so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure, sir, and I can't wait to get in on some dystopian flicks with you. I can't wait.
Yeah, absolutely.
My man. We're going to get Kyle out of here. You know the deal. Ellis Cinema. Oh, wait, there's so many shows around the corner, much to the bane of my existence. Maybe I'll get Kyle back on here a couple more times, discuss some of the old ones with us. Anyway, Ellis Cinema, I Know Movies and You Don't with Kyle Brule. Check him out. Check me out. Do your thing. We gone.